Morning. My name is James. I'm one of the pastors here at LifePoint. If we've never had the opportunity to meet, you're going, I have not seen you here before. It's because I'm one of the pastors who travels all the way from Tampa, Florida, because I love this church and you all so much. So I get to come out here about 10 to 12 times a year, and so thankful to be with you this weekend. He said there'll be snow in the parking lot on Christmas Eve. There may be snow in the parking lot when you leave today. We don't know, right? But really, so thankful to be here. I traveled this weekend with my best friend, the love of my life, for over 13 years. My wife joined us today. Her name's Brittany, and I'm so thankful that she's here. And just so you guys know, I should clarify real quick, because there's two Brittany's on the front row. Pastor Rusty's also married to a Brittany. One name, two different people, just so you guys know, all right? It's interesting. I got to tell you how much I do love you guys and how much I love coming here. Is we sat on the tarmac in Tampa and they said, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wait about 10 more minutes. There was lightning on the ramp, which to me, I was like, good time to deplane and put me in a building. Instead, we spent the next hour, because we're under tornado watch, on the plane. So if you ever doubted my dedication, LifePoint, I'm dedicated. I'm in this thing, all right? But I'm also excited because it is Christmas time. Oh my goodness. Okay, some of you don't love Christmas like I love Christmas. We're going to help them. Those of you who love Christmas, warm your voices real quick. Oh, some of y'all love Christmas. We about to see. All right. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. Oh my goodness. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Oh, you're my favorite service. My goodness. Oh, I just want to start quoting scenes from the Elf right now. Santa. I know him. It's so good. Okay. Anyways, so what I do know about Christmas music is 23% of you in the room hated that moment. 23% of Americans hate Christmas music. And I disagree with you. But there is something around Christmas music that we need to decide once and for all today in this moment. It's not in your outline. Stop looking at it. We'll get there in a moment. This is pivotal, okay? Everyone must participate. How many of you in the room, you believe that it is appropriate to listen to Christmas music before Halloween? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Hold your hand up. Real quick, ushers, right here. These people out. Let's escort them out right now. Maniacs, right? How many of you believe that it's appropriate to listen to Christmas music between Halloween and Thanksgiving? Raise your hand. You're wrong as well. Put your hand down. All right. How many of you know the only biblical, I don't know if it's biblical, sir. How many of you know the only appropriate time to listen to Christmas music is after Thanksgiving until Christmas, but not a day after Christmas? Raise your hand. Yes. Best friends, okay? Here's what I love about the Christmas season. There's something about the lights in a season where even our calendar and the daylight of day is getting shorter. There's something about the lights in dark moments. There's something about the joy of Christmas music. There's something about the season that kind of takes you back to a childlike hope, right? There's something about the magic of Christmas that you begin to dream and long for better. And most of us, regardless if you feel like you had the picturesque childhood, most of us can probably think back to at least one or two core memories where Christmas was this time of hope, where all of the chaos of maybe some of the family dysfunction wasn't as great, where, the siblings tended to get along together for a few minutes. There's these moments where maybe everything could be made right again. And we know that, about 1,000 years ago, some of the fathers of the faith decided as Christians that we would begin to adopt this time of year to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. I remember growing up, there was a lot of things that we did around Christmas. There were parties and plays and performances. And one of the things I most looked forward to at Christmas was every year in our church, you had a cast of Christmas. You got to try out to be in the Christmas play, right? I can tell some of you were a part of that too, okay? We're all in recovery together, all right? But as a kid, I remember I always wanted to be one person in the Christmas story. Not Jesus. No, I wanted to be the Wisemen, right? Because the Wisemen were like the church's version of Aladdin. They had the coolest clothes, right? They had these fancy hats. You got to carry around gold. It was amazing to be the Wisemen, right? But unfortunately, I was never a Wiseman in the Christmas play. A sympathetic awe would have been nice. Thanks. All right. But no, instead, maybe you got to be an angel and wear a white robe and oh, that was all you did, right? But you had to at least sing. If you had no acting ability and no singing ability, you found yourself amongst, well, you're exactly right, the shepherds. And, I did some research. I found out Pastor Rusty was a shepherd. Rumor on the street is he still is, all right? But I can remember one year, one of my first years of being a shepherd, because it was a repeat offender for me, but one year, my mom gave me a dirty bathrobe, because somehow that made you look like a shepherd, and they walked me to the back of the auditorium, and they handed me a rope that had a kid on the other side. A kid meaning a baby goat. Different story, okay? So, have this baby goat, and they put him in the aisle, and they say, okay, James, all you got to do is walk down the aisle with the goat. Seems simple enough. I grew up in Alabama. I should have enough country in me to have this moment secured, but I'm more country than country. And so, set off down the aisle. I don't know what happened after row number 2. But somewhere around row number 1 at the back of the auditorium, this goat decided he hated God and church altogether, right? This goat goes wild. I mean, just boom, boom, like banging into chairs. And I'm trying to hold on to it. I'm about 5 years old. I'm holding on this rope and just white knuckling it. My hand's getting torn up. I never remember making it to the stage. I don't know what happened to the goat. I just know I was like, this is the worst thing ever. I had one job, was to hold on to Christmas and the goat, and I let go of both, right? What does that have to do with today? Well, I'm glad you asked. Today I want to talk about casting Christmas. I want to talk about how does it look for us to have a childlike faith around Christmas. But if we're going to have a childlike faith, we may need to look at some childhood-like tendencies and go, wait, maybe there's some things that we need to release. I can remember holding onto that rope as a child, holding as tightly as I could because I was so nervous about what everybody would think, about how I was performing, and about everybody else's expectations. And some of you are here today on December the 18th, and if you're honest with yourself, with those around you, you're white-knuckling Christmas. You think the idea of this Christmas is, if you try harder, it'll be better. I want you to write this in your outline, that the goal of Christmas is not to try, it's to trust. Today's not about white-knuckling something, holding on, performing better. If that's what you think the message of Christmas is, I've got even better news. I've got good news for you. The good news of Christmas is this, is you can't try enough. You simply have to trust. So I want to look at the second half of Scripture. It's known as the New Testament. You've got Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These are known as the Gospels, of the story of Jesus. His birth, his life, his death, his resurrection, his teachings, the miracles, the things that were beyond normal that he did. In these scriptures, we find this story of Christmas. I want to do this. As adults today, what would it look like for us to cast Christmas? To cast the play, to go, what does it look like to have the people who were there for the birth of Jesus? How would we find ourselves in the Christmas story today? Is Jesus truly at the center? Have we truly found the hope and meaning of Christmas? Or if we're honest, are we in characters who missed out, not on the magic of Christmas, but the miracle of it? The first person you can write down your outline is this, the Innkeeper. That's our first character of Christmas. The Innkeeper was crowded with chaos. We see in the Christmas story in Luke, we find that Jesus' mother and father, Mary and Joseph, had to go back to Bethlehem for a census. And part of this census was to gather all the people from their places of origin in order to count them because they were getting ready for a time of war. And in order to do that, you needed to number the people. And so as they gather all of the people in this one city from the place that their heritage was, they get them together. There was crowded rooms. There was crowded streets. And as Joseph and Mary looked for a place so that Mary could have this child, this baby, the Messiah, the Savior, the King of Kings, they approached an inn. And what we see in Luke is that there was no room for them. In Luke chapter 2 and verse 7, it says, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. They would have approached this place hearing from an innkeeper, there's no room for you. See, I wonder for you and I if we're not crowded with the chaos of Christmas. So much so that we miss the Christ in the middle of all of it. This innkeeper, you won't find the innkeeper around a nativity scene. You won't find him in a manger scene. We rarely even find them in a Christmas play. Why? Because they were so busy, they missed the blessing. Now, I do want to say this as an aside. The innkeeper isn't bad. The innkeeper's just busy. I don't think you're bad this weekend, but I think we all do have a tendency to be busy. Have we ever become so busy with the good things that we missed out on the God things of life? What would it look like for you and I to examine our schedule? Are we crowded with the chaos of trouble, tension, and transition this time of year? Or are we crowded with the chaos of even the things about Christmas, not really experiencing the hope of Christmas? Well, what would that look like? According to Consumer Reports, the average American spends 42 hours around Christmas buying, wrapping, and returning gifts. So let's think about this. If you spend 42 hours buying, wrapping, and returning gifts, that means the thing that you spent priority on is so low a priority for the person that you prioritized with the present that they took back the present you prioritized. You tracking? Good. 42 hours. A work week spent around buying gifts to impress people that we probably don't even like. Because we think, if I crowd Christmas with enough chaos, it'll be better this year. If I try harder, if I do more, then maybe it'll be better. But the goal of Christmas is not to try, it's to trust. The innkeeper was busy. Some of you are already experiencing this busyness. I did some research on a thing called festive stress. Have you heard of this? I'm not making this up. This is an actual diagnosis. Festive stress. It sets in on December the 13th. So you're like, wait, I remember feeling a little stressful that day. Catch this, turn severe December 18th. That's today. You really feeling it right now? Yeah, you're like, dude, wrap it up. You got about 18 minutes and 15 seconds. We got to make the ornament wrapping, and then we got to go to grandma's house. We got to buy some presents, got to wrap them so they can return them. Turns out it peaks at December 25th around 2 p.m. Now, this is not in the stats, but I think it's probably when some of your in-laws come over. Okay, let me give you the stats I didn't give the other services because you're my favorite. 31% of people have it. That's 1 in every 3-ish, minus 2.33%. There's a mathematician in the room that'll check me later. All right, 49% of people deal with it by consuming too much coffee. How many cups have you had this morning, sir? That's cup number 4? That's cup number 4, isn't it? Yeah. No judgment, not bad, just busy. Okay. But 74% of people are like me. You know how you cope with festive stress? Are you ready for this? Unhealthy snacks. Hey, I don't even care if I like the snack around Christmas, I'm eating it. Christmas tree, Santa's reindeer snacks. I don't care what it is. Just something to help me cope with the fact that we're so stinking busy. Maybe I flew all the way from Tampa today to help you not dive into the character that experienced the chaos of Christmas. And I tell you, hey, guess what they're not going to remember 5 years from now? The gift you bought them. Can I tell you what they're not going to remember 5 minutes after they get the gift? What you wrapped it in. Do yourself a favor. This isn't in the notes, but do yourself a favor. Just get a gift bag. It's okay. We don't care about the bow and the nice creases and the leftover. Just get the bag. Put some tissue paper on top. It's fine. I can tell some of the ladies right now are elbowing their husband, right? Like, you don't even need to do the donation thing in the mall. Just get the bag, right? That's all you need to do this year. Take some space. Because a lot of us are only adding to our schedule. And I think to trust this year is to remove some things from our calendar. Give some space. See, if we live life like the innkeeper this Christmas, we're going to have a life that's unaffected. You write that in your outline? A life that's unaffected. We don't get any more of the biography of the innkeeper because the innkeeper missed the most compelling part of Christmas, which was Christ. If you and I aren't careful, we'll miss the meaning of Christmas, and here's what will happen. You'll experience what I call the Christmas day dumps. It's the day after Christmas, it's December 26th, after everybody has unwrapped all the presents, after you get the bill from Amex about the things you bought that you couldn't afford. You buy all this stuff, they unwrap it, and the happiness of Christmas faded, but the hope is still missing. I want you to experience the hope that lasts even when the happiness fades. Then on December 26th, you go, we unwrapped all the gifts, but the greatest gift that we've ever gotten wasn't under the tree anyways. Oh no, the greatest gift we ever had hung on a tree for you and me. And his name was Jesus. He started as a baby in a manger, but he became a Christ king who hung on a cross. The second character would be Herod. Now, Herod is like the Scrooge McDuck of Christmas. Like, Herod was a crazy person. Herod was a king, and in that day and time, kings had to look out for who was trying to take the throne from them. They viewed anyone of prominence as opposition to their power. So Herod was fueled by fear. Fueled by fear. Why? Because the one thing a king never wants to hear about is that there's another king coming. And there were all these prophecies of Bible-y word for future telling or truth telling from the Old Testament, the first half of the Bible, that foretold there was a king coming in the New Testament. They would say things like, when you see this star, when these things happen in this place with this person, that will be your sign that this is the king. See, God was never trying to hide his gift. He was trying to reveal it. And so Herod, hearing of the prophecies in the scriptures, was not excited about a new king coming, because when you're worried about your own power, it leads you to insecurity, and insecurity will invite you to be someone you're not. So Herod is only worried that this king is coming to reign on the throne of a castle. What you and I know in reverse that Herod did not know in advance was that this king never came to rule on a castle. He came to sit on the throne of our hearts. We see this in the passage, Matthew chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi, or the Wisemen from the east, came to Jerusalem and asked, where is the one who's been born the king of the Jews? You want to know, like real quick, they ask a king, where's the king? That's pretty gnarly. It says when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed. It meant he actually felt in his body sick over hearing this news because he was worried about his own power. I say, James, listen, as we approach Christmas, I'm not a king, I'm not a queen, like obviously I'm not Herod. My question is it possible at this Christmas holiday season that like Herod, you're being fueled by fear or puzzled by the power dynamics at play in your job or in your family? You know what I'm talking about, right? The one Christmas game that none of us sit down to play, but we're playing anyways, the comparison game. Hey, how's Johnny? Oh, A honor roll student. But I don't know if you know this, Susie, A honor roll and made varsity for volleyball. Yeah, it just keeps the one-up game. Or it's, what did you get, Mom, for Christmas this year? Oh, I got her, oh, yeah, that's about this much money. I got her this. Right? It's the one-up game, the comparison game. How are you doing? Because I'm going to determine my value based on what you value. Maybe you write in the notes, the comparison game, no one wins and everybody loses. I want to invite you this Christmas not to be fueled by the fear of worrying about what other people think about you. Some of us right now are trying to figure out how to rent a car from Turo so you can pull up in something that you can't even afford just so you can impress people that you don't even like. You don't have to be fueled by fear this season. You can actually rest assured of knowing that you're loved and valued by God. What would it look like if King Herod would have known that King Jesus wasn't coming to take his place? He was actually coming to reign in his heart. Herod missed the part of Christmas about the Christ because he was protecting his own power. Others of us, it's not the comparison game. If we're being honest, the power part comes in the control of Christmas. I want to invite everyone to not nudge your neighbor for the next 37 seconds, okay? What do I mean by the control of Christmas? I mean the person who makes the itinerary. 7 a.m., we're going to wake up. 7:15, we're going to go downstairs. 7:25, everybody's in their Christmas PJs for the photo op. I don't care if you don't want to do it. You smile. I'm not happy. Smile anyways, right? 7:35, we're going to make sure that we have Christmas breakfast. There's only about 7 minutes for this, so eat fast, right? 8:15, we're going to Grandma's house. 8:27, we're going to Grandpa's house. 8:28, we're out of there because Grandpa's crazy, right? You got everything in line. And then you know what happens. At 2:15, everybody comes to your house for Christmas lunch. But guess who's always late? Aunt Nina. She's going to show up at 2:45 just to prove to you, you don't tell her what to do. You see, that's an odd name to come up with. That's a real person. It's my Aunt Nina. She's crazy. We all have this in our family. Listen, I want to invite you to not be fueled by fear this season. I'm going to give you the antidote for it. You ready? Put the fun in dysfunction. Every family's dysfunctional. It's not just yours. Listen, the reason we all laugh is to laugh away some of the pain of what we remember about past craziness at Christmas. What if this Christmas you said, I'm not going to be puzzled by power or fueled by fear. I'm going to just love joyfully, peacefully, and graciously everyone that comes to my house. Aunt Nina's late. Here's what you do. You put on the calendar 2:15, but when do you start? 2:45. You know when she's coming at 2:45. Don't be mad. Just wait. Hey, we're going to do a Christmas game. At 2:45, we're going to eat. Aunt Nina walks in at 2:45, thinks she's late. You're just on time. It's going to make her so mad. But don't do it to make her mad. Do it so that you can live at peace. This Christmas isn't about trying harder. It's about trusting. Would you give space to Jesus this Christmas? One of the things that I would encourage you to do, whether it's being puzzled with power over the control of the schedule or being crowded with chaos, can I invite you to do something very practical? Give space for Jesus. Okay, James, that sounds really good. We're in church. How do I do that? I want to invite you to do one thing before Christmas Day. I want to invite you to go to Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 20. It's 20 verses. I want to invite you to take those 20 verses and read that together with your family. It's just the story of Christmas. Do my kids, almost 9 and 6 years old, do they love when we read the Christmas story? No. Right now it's a discipline. But if I want them to ever have a desire, discipline is the gateway for desire. Would you make a decision of discipline to read the Christmas story? I'm reminding my kids now the gift of Christmas before they unwrap the gifts under the tree. The second thing is this. We practice in our house a tradition called pray before we play. Had to have 2 P's because I'm a preacher, right? Pray before we play. It's as simple as this. They wake up Christmas morning, they're so excited. They can't wait to open all the Christmas gifts that Santa worked hard all year to save, budget for, wrap, all the hard work that Santa did. They're so ready to unwrap those presents. But before we do that, what we're going to do, we're just going to pray. Say, okay, real quick before we get downstairs, God, thank you so much for our family. And then Braxton, my almost 9-year-old, he really likes to pray. God, thank you for everyone in the world. Okay, wrap it up, Braxton. Come on, here we go. Grayson, God, thank you for our gifts. Amen. That's the 6-year-old, childlike faith. This year, I just want to invite you to those 2 different things may be the antidote to being the character that you don't want to be this Christmas. Don't be puzzled with power. Don't be crowded with chaos. If you do, if you are puzzled with power or fueled by fear, you'll have a life that's untouched. Herod missed out on the miracle of Jesus drawing near because of his insecurity and his fear. The third character that we see in this story would be the religious leaders. Religious leaders in that day and time were bound by behavior. It was all about what they could know, all about what they could achieve, all about their behavior into a way of being right with God. We see in Matthew chapter 2 and verse 4 and 5, it said, when he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, that's the religious people. He asked them where the Messiah, Jesus, was to be born. They said, in Bethlehem in Judea, for this is what the prophet had written. Now this is so important. There's a prophecy, a foretelling. The religious leaders, they hear it, they know about it, but they do nothing with it. Oh, this is so important for you and I. For those of us who claim to follow Jesus, and you've been around church for a minute, if we're not careful, we'll think that we know so much that intellectually we know what Christmas is about, but we refuse to experience it. See, what's interesting about this is they drew the religious leaders together and they knew where Jesus would be born, but you know what you'll never find in the Christmas story? That they went there. One of the greatest distances I believe that Jesus or God's Spirit often travels with our human condition is the space between our head and our heart. That somehow we think if we knew better, we would do better. That if we know more, we could behave more. No, friend, the miracle of Christmas isn't to try. It's to trust. Their knowing never led to their going. What could that look like for us this Christmas? It could look like that we know all about the Christmas story. You know, most of you, you've been around church long enough, you're filling in the blank ahead of time. You're circling the right words. You're doing all the stuff. You're like, boom, aced it. A+, pre-Christmas message. I'm winning. But to have full notes and an empty heart is not what Christ came to do. What would it look like for us to go, no, I really got to put Jesus at the center. You want to know how you can tell if Jesus has traveled from your head to your heart? Ask yourself if your feet are in the place that Jesus' feet would be this year. You're like, okay, this is the part where he plugs the Christmas Eve services. This is the part where I ask you, if Jesus was walking this planet today, where would he be this week? I think he would find a juvenile detention center and swing by and let some child know that's locked away and feels alone at Christmas, that there's a God who still loves them and values them and sees the best in them despite them showing their worst. I think he'd find somebody that was in the displaced community, give them something to eat and something to drink, because when we do that, we do it unto God. I think he would find the person that they were offended with and upset and maybe forgive them this year. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not about trying. It's about trusting. For those of us who claim to follow Jesus, has Jesus moved from our head to our heart? We know because we've had movement. Don't be bound by behavior. These religious leaders were bound by behavior and instead had a life that was unchanged. Unchanged. We know this is the human condition. We know it's the temptation, right? That if we knew more, if we had the right resources, we'd live better and different. Can I prove it to you real quick that that's not true? Most of us in the room can think back to something called Tybo. P90X. 75 hard. The week after Christmas, we're all going to plan for January 1st when we do our New Year's, and we're going to keep them for about 4 days. Oh, there's plenty of us in the room that downloaded the book, that bought the app, that got the Tybo, the P90X, the 75 hard, the 30-day shred. We got the Juice Plus Press subscription. We're going to do better this year if we buy it, if we know it. And yet, we're living the same. We're living the same. I dare you, go home, buy Tybo, put it on your shelf, and then tell me if you got 6 packs 60 days from now. No, because we know that the power is not in the information, it's in the application. If we want to live like Jesus this year, it's to turn information into application so our hearts in this world can experience transformation. Okay, we got the 3 characters we don't want to be, James, I get it. But it's supposed to be a thrill of hope. I'm ready to feel some hope. I'm glad you stayed on board. The 4th character are the Wisemen. The Wisemen were driven by devotion. Driven by devotion. Another way you could write this would be they worshiped with wonder. Wonder. They were like, oh, I wonder if this is possible. I wonder if this could be true. From the scriptures and historical context, we understand the wise men would have traveled something like 700 miles to get to Jesus. In Matthew chapter 2 and verse 11, we see it says, when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down, worshiped him, opened their treasures, and presented with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The wise men, driven by devotion. It's these 3 characters that always stand out around the nativity scene. Now, I realize some of you this year, you're going to go over to some people's house. You're going to go somewhere where people are like a little too churchy, okay? And you know what I'm talking about. It's like the person you're like, hey, man, how's it going? You're like, blessed and highly favored, brethren. Cool, bro. I just want to know how you were doing, right? And you're going to go to their house and, you're going to open the door and you say, Merry Christmas. You're going to say, Merry Christmas, right? Oh, it's perfect. Thank you so much. And so you're going to show up. Here's what I want you to do, right? It's just super mess with them. Are you ready for this? I want you to, when you go into their living room, they got one of these things, the nativity scene. I want you to go, you guys, I'll fix it. And you pick up all the wise men. See, guys, that's not where those go. It's usually in the living room. Walk into the kitchen. Oh, you're perfect. And put them on the kitchen counter. Is that safe there? Okay. Thanks so much, Pastor Mike. Okay. And then you put the wise men in there. And you tell them, guys, the wise men weren't there for the birth. They didn't show up till like Jesus was a toddler, but I fixed it. They were like a few hundred miles away. Then you're like, what? And you're like, yeah, got them. Okay, good. Just a side note. They're driven by devotion. And then they're probably not going to fully bite on that moment. They're going to kind of be like, okay, then here's what you do. You ready for this? You give them, hey, how do we know they were wise men and not wise women? Everybody say how. You're so nervous. I love this. You say, well, if they were wise women, they'd have showed up early. They'd have thrown a baby shower. They'd have brought practical gifts. Since they were wise men, they were late and brought things that we still don't understand, right? Ladies, you can applaud for yourself right there. That's the first time you wrote down your outline. You wrote that down in your outline? That's the thing. Oh, the profundity of that moment. The wise men finally make it to Jesus. They finally get to this place and they bring gifts, gold, frankincense, myrrh. They were driven by devotion, not just get there, but to give something. Do you know our gifts tell something to the world about our God? God doesn't need our gifts. God's not up there wondering if we'll give him something. God is God. If he needed something from us, that makes us God. God doesn't need us. He created us to love us. But our gifts to God tell the world about our God. Gold would have stood for the fact that Jesus would be king. Frankincense stood for the fact that he would be our high priest, or the one who would make us right with God. Myrrh was the oddest of the three gifts. Myrrh would have essentially been like you and I taking embalming fluid to a baby shower. It was death. That was what it represented. And although it feels out of place in the cultural context, it was just right for our Christ, because that baby in a manger would become a king on a cross who would be resurrected to new life after experiencing death and destruction. And that resurrection would tell us that he would redeem and restore all things and all people back to him. The thrill of hope isn't just in Christmas. Oh, Christmas is the beginning of the story of a Jesus who redeemed all people back to God. So James, I don't have any gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The only gift that God desires from you are the gifts that you have. What would those gifts look like? Would you write treasure in your outline? Let me give you a quick math equation. Go treasure equals T3. Treasure equals T3. I want to give you 3 gifts that I think you can give God this year that says something about him to the world around you. First T is your time. Oh, if you want to make an intentional effort to not be crowded with chaos, choose to give God part of your time. The second T would be talk. Ask yourself, if you were to budget or to reference your speech, are your words spent more on the things you'll purchase than God's presence this Christmas? Oh, what are you talking about when you talk about God? Is it just about a place? Is it about a person that you have relationship with? It's your time, your talk. The third is this, your thoughts. Your thoughts. If you don't want to be bound by behavior, fueled by fear, crowded with chaos this season, make an intentional decision that before you walk into Christmas parties, before you walk into Christmas family functions, before you get to the door, maybe even in the car when you're in the driveway, you tell yourself, I know whose I am. Like what? There's nothing about that rhymey or Christmassy, James. No, but it is a truth that is so deep that if you can know in your soul that you are God's child, that he loves you, that he is well pleased in you, you can walk into any room and not be bound by the busyness or trying to perform for other people's opinion. Instead, you could walk in and be driven by devotion to the God who loves you and cares for you. You could take that into every chaotic moment this season, knowing that God is with you and that he loves you. We have some Christmas traditions in our house. One of those are the Christmas movies we watch this time of year. I have one Christmas movie I've watched the last 36 years. I'll watch it again this Christmas Eve. I always watch It's a Wonderful Life. It's probably just me and you, but I love it. My wife sleeps through it every year. I even bought it on iTunes and everything. No. There's that part where he's on the bridge and his lips bloody. I cry every year. My wife likes a different movie. She likes a movie called Polar Express, right? Oh, a few more fans, okay. Animated movies. But in Polar Express, there's this thing that happens. as children growing to adults, they no longer hear the ringing of a bell. And it means that they no longer believe in the magic of Christmas, right? And so the whole goal of this movie is to help you embrace and believe in the magic of Christmas. Well, I didn't fly several hundred miles, spend time away from my kids to get you to believe in the magic of Christmas this weekend. And if I'm being honest with you, I didn't even travel this far or spend this much time to get you to believe in the miracle of Christmas. I traveled this far and spent this time to tell you that the miracle of Christmas believed in you. The miracle of Christmas is that while we were still sinners, while we were a long ways off, while we were still dead in our own destructional path, God saw fit to send Jesus. When we couldn't measure up, when we couldn't perform our way into right relationship with him, when we couldn't know all the things to do or not to do, when we couldn't keep all the laws and commands, when we fell short again and again and we needed this thing called grace, he said, I'll give you this thing called grace, but I won't send it through somebody's voice. I won't even send it from the skies. I'll send it in the form of my son, Jesus. I'll wrap him in human flesh and bone. I'll sit him in a manger, and one day this baby will become a man who will not only do the miraculous, but he'll live the miraculous, all to prove that God loves you. The miracle of Christmas is that you don't have to try anymore. The miracle of Christmas is that you simply trust. You trust that God so loved the world, he sent his one and only son, Jesus, to this planet. Friend, what would it look like to trust this season? I don't know what it looks like for you, but I know for me, when I fully trust, when I truly love, something changes. There's this saying that love makes you crazy. When I met my wife almost 15 years ago, when I was first trying to figure out how I was gonna ask her to be my girlfriend, that's pivotal before the wife, girlfriend, I did the only manly macho thing I knew to do. She lived about 455 miles away from me in Lafayette, Louisiana. I lived in Birmingham, Alabama, so I did the manly thing. I went to Build-A-Bear, and easy, sir. I built this cute, fluffy bear. I did the voice thing, and I said, hey, Brittany, this is James. Like, who else is it gonna be, right? I love you. Will you be my girlfriend? And then I drove 455 miles. I parked in the driveway of her parents' home. I took these little rocks and I threw them up at the window. Brittany's dad's name's Ricky. Ricky, if you're watching, I'm sorry. I think this is the first time you heard that I busted that glass at your house. Merry Christmas. I threw rocks up the window. She came out. I had candles in the form of a heart. Will you be my girlfriend? Spoiler alert, she said yes, we're married, 2 kids, okay? I say all that to say this. I don't know if love makes you crazy, but I know this to be true. Love won't let you be lazy. This holiday season, I want you to recognize that God's love moved him into action. And for those of you who already claim to follow Jesus, I'm asking you to move into action. I'm asking you to do something with the love and the hope you found. Don't just talk about it. Be about it this season. I'm gonna ask the team, I know we didn't talk about this, and I know I'm way over time, I'm wrapping up, but can you find the invitation slide? I'm gonna ask you to put that back up. I'm asking everybody in the room, one of the most holy things we could do in this moment is I want you to think about somebody in your life who needs to experience the love and hope that you claim you found. Is it a friend, a coworker? Is it a family member? Is it the person you need to forgive or the person that you need forgiveness from? I want you to think about that person. You got them locked away in your mind? And I'm gonna ask you to do something. Move from your mind to your heart. I'm asking everybody in the room, take your phone out real quick. Go ahead, it's okay. When you take your phone out, I want you to scan this QR code. Because one of the most Christ-like things we could do this Christmas is to not leave Jesus in a manger, but give him the opportunity to reign into somebody's heart this Christmas. If we really believe Jesus changes everything, that he is hope personified, then we need to get everybody we can from every place we can to these services so they can encounter the understanding that it's not about trying harder. It's simply trust. I ask you all across this room, if you would, close your eyes and bow your heads. God, thank you. Thank you for Jesus. Sometimes we brush past. We think we've done you a service by mentioning your name at the season that we claim celebrates you. We want to just pause and say, thank you for your son, Jesus. Thank you for this gift that changes everything. It doesn't leave us in guilt and shame, but brings us into grace and mercy. Thank you for this gift that on our worst days brings out the best in us. On our best days reminds us that it's your love and not our performance. Thank you for Jesus that reminds us we don't have to try harder. We trust in the completed work of the gift of your Son. We say today, thank you for the gift of your love. We pray all of this in the name above every name, the name of our hope and our liberating King. In Jesus' name. And everyone said, amen.